Hello and welcome to Better Together. I'm Tony.
And I'm Kimberly.
And we want to invite you to talk about some deep things with us. We're going to have some conversations ongoing about things that matter to us and that we hope will matter or may matter to you more than what you realize. In fact, today I want to talk about, or we're going to have a discussion on dealing with adversity. How do we deal with adversity? And I'd like you to answer questions concerning you personally, you and your relationship maybe with your spouse, and how you deal with adversity. So just to give you a little context, Kim and I have been married for 24 years. Congratulations.
We've made it that far.
Yeah, depending on when you're watching this. We have 4 children. I am vocationally, I'm a pastor. I have been a pastor since 2010. I've been the senior pastor, depending again on when you're watching this video, of our organization for 5 years in March of 2024. So, we face a lot of different stuff. Kim volunteers, at the church, as well as has been involved in years past in homeschooling our children. In leading ministries and doing a lot of other stuff. And so that to say, we have faced quite a bit of adversity, and I'm sure whatever your context is, you've faced a lot of adversity as well. So that's what we want to discuss. What about, in fact, I want to start by making a statement that I heard someone say recently. In fact, we were at a Wednesday night service at church, and it's called... practical discipleship, which is really cool. And the gentleman said, when you deal with heavy things, you get used to lifting heavy stuff. And so that's a positive side of dealing with adversity. And, I'll be honest, I think that when we have dealt with adversity well, we have grown. And when we have not dealt with adversity well, it has really defined clearly areas that we needed to grow in individually and corporately.
I would say yes, suffer.
Yeah.
we have suffered.
We have suffered. So do you have any keys? Do you have any advice? Is there a particular adversity that you have traversed that you want to share, or that has affected you disproportionately, positively or negatively? Or
so I would say one adversity would be when I thought I had a back issue or something, remember, and it was like, oh my, but I'm so young.
No, you didn't think you had a back issue. You had an incredibly horrible back issue. Just to describe it for her, she was hunched over, and you were incapable of standing up. I mean, she was almost 90 degrees. Mm-hmm. It was right after having our second child.
Yes, and I thought childbirth was painful. Whew. This was a whole nother level of pain that I experienced. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get over this pain? But in the midst of that, I started reading the Word and more, and praising and thanking God. And I thought, when is the pain going to end, and how am I going to get through it? And it was in the midst of that I learned I could rely on the Lord and His strength in that moment of weakness.
So what was the moment? What was your low point at that? I remember on the outside kind of looking in, and my heart as a husband was absolutely breaking, because I just felt like, you know what? There's nothing I can do. I have prayed. Mm-hmm. I have asked God for mercy and healing, and we have believed the Word of God and stood on the promises of God, and we're not seeing anything. What was your low point there?
The low point was when I actually went to a surgeon, and I thought he was going to be the one to operate on me. And I was thinking, I don't know how I'm going to trust this person or whatever. I mean, nothing against this physician or anything. This is my faith walk. I mean, but anyway, I was like, I don't know. I think it would take more faith for me to go under and get surgery than it would to just have, some miraculous healing. But I remember thinking, when I left out of that physician's office and he said, "I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I don't do the surgery anymore." After he realized, "I think you could benefit from this surgery," I thought, I was in so much agony and so much pain, and I still had to go home and take care of
Two babies.
two babies at that time. And, you were working and you had to provide for the family. You couldn't stay home and take care of me.
Right.
That was a really low point. But in that, it was really miraculous, because when I got home that day, there was a call from another neurosurgeon's office, and they were like, "Hey, an opening came up. We think that, would you like to come?" And within days, within like a week from that appointment, I kid you not, I was in there, and it happened so fast. I didn't have time to even be in fear of the surgery. But I remember going in, getting that surgery, not having time to fear it, and coming out thinking, "Wow, I survived."
I remember as we were coming back from the first doctor's visit, and you couldn't even sit in the seat, and how miserable and how much pain you were in. And I will just tell you, my heart, every emotion, as a husband, as a man, as a believer, was just running through my mind. From feeling weak to being angry to asking God why, all of these things were just, they were just pulsing as I'm looking at you in the other seat, not even being able to sit up to make the ride from the doctor that just told us that he can't do anything. And so maybe some folks are out there now, and they're in the middle of something that they feel like is absolutely unbearable. What are some keys? Looking back on that time and many, many, many times since then, I learned a lot from that. I learned not to turn on God. I learned to trust God patiently, and understand that even though I didn't see what God was doing and how he was working behind the scenes, that he really was, and it was really being set up, and learning how to stay stable until I saw the revelation.
Right. And if I could be transparent, during that time, I remember being in the room at one point thinking it would just be best if I wasn't living anymore. The pain was that excruciating.
Right.
It was just that excruciatingly painful, and there was no hope. But in the midst of that, I still cried out. I knew that my source was the Lord.
Wow.
And I was like, no matter what, God, you have me in the midst of this. I am not giving up.
Wow.
I will not give up. I've come too far with you, with my relationship with the Lord,
Right.
to just be like, "Oh, I'm done."
Yeah.
Wasn't an option.
Yeah. I guess at that point, and this is another key, is that, during that time, as you probably did, I rehearsed the times. I remembered the times that God had been faithful. I remembered the times in the past where God's timing, it worked. And I rehearsed the trust that I had given and the faithfulness that God had shown, for that particular situation. And I think that's been true in just about every situation. So keys to dealing with adversity is rehearsing past experiences when they are consistent with the Word. There's been times when I've given up. There's been times when I didn't, when I failed in the middle of adversity. And I can't blame God for that. I can't blame anybody but me, walking away. And
Yeah, I was just about to say, in the midst of adversity, I think there's nothing worse than turning on each other.
yeah,
And then, pointing the finger and blaming. And I think rehearsing what coulda, shoulda, whatever. I don't think that is you asked for a functional thing. I think rehearsing the good and not allowing yourself to go down the hole of the negative, of the, oh, if I had done this, oh, if I had done that, self-deprecation, that.
Rehearsing the fearful narrative is not walking in faith. And I think that's what we do. We begin to look and fixate on the fearful. And when we do that, it's counterintuitive. Our spirits drop. The Bible tells us very clearly, whatever is good and lovely and is of a good report, think on these things. And I think very often that we don't correct the narratives of our thinking, and we get caught up on the initial onslaught of whatever adversity that might be, and it's never good. So we begin to look at the situation, the adversity, from a deficit to begin with, instead of looking at it, from God's perspective.
And I would also say this, another functional thing to do, like if you are someone that is dealing with adversity right now, I wished I had done this sooner, and I still need to get better at it, but writing down those times that in the midst of my adversity where He is faithful.
Yeah.
And then that way I have a real tangible thing for the next adversity that comes, because we will face adversity.
Right. That's rehearsing those victories, yeah.
And it's just remembering those times and focusing on that. So
especially if you're a pessimist.
If you call it journaling, whatever your avenue of remembering is, I encourage you, do that. I wished I could have gone back.
Well, I think that very often, and I made a statement, especially if you're a pessimist, if you're inclined to the negative, that becomes even more important, because your memory is the most painful thing in your life can be that thing that you're facing. That's generally what people say. The worst thing in my life, the biggest giant is the one that's in front of me. The other ones you've already overcome. I heard Rick Warren say this. He said, the shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory. And so I would agree, especially if you have a tendency to remember the negative things all the time, write down those positives. And because here's why. Because our negativity, our negative attitude or negative perspective does not negate God and His faithfulness. Because you can feel negative through a whole thing and realize that God drug you through it. Yeah. So I think adversity, the reality is, and this is true, we're going to go through adversity no matter what. The question is, how are we going to go through it? Are we going to go through it turning on each other? Are we going to go through it dishonoring each other and dishonoring God? Yeah. Or are we going to go through adversity in a way that will show others that our belief and our faith in God is something that's real and valid?
Yes, and that's the validity. That is the validity of the gospel.
Yeah.
And the power of the cross.
Yeah.
Is that's why we are able to.
So at that point, our lives become a written narrative of the faithfulness of God. And that helps us become and stay and be better together. So we want to invite you to trust God in whatever situation, whatever scenario that you're in, whatever adversity that you're facing. Turn to Him, not on Him. Trust His Word. Double down. Get into the Word of God. Get somebody to pray for you. If you're not in a faith community, in other words, if you don't have somebody who you can call or you can text or you can email to come along beside of you, be intentional. We are better together. When I say that, it's not just in the context of marriage, it's in the context of Christ's community. So if you're not involved in a local church, get in a local church.
Yes.
Even if you are involved in a local church, get in a small group or a local fellowship.
Yes.
Incredibly important. And you will learn the reality of we are better together. Look forward to seeing you again very soon. God bless you. See you on the next episode.
God bless.